There is a stretch of time, somewhere between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., when your yard stops belonging to you. The grass is still there, the fence, the trees, the feeder hanging quietly in the dark. But something changes in those hours. Something ancient. Something hidden beneath the illusion of silence. Most people sleep through it. They wake up believing the night was empty. But it wasn't. Because while human neighborhoods fall still, another world begins moving through the shadows with extraordinary precision. Tiny hearts beat faster. Eyes remain half open in the darkness. Creatures you thought were resting are making decisions that determine whether they survive until sunrise. And birds know this. In fact, researchers studying nocturnal predator behavior and avian sleep patterns have discovered that the hours before dawn are among the most psychologically dangerous moments in a bird's entire day. Not because the night is loud, but because it becomes quiet in a very specific way. A dangerous way. The predators change. The wind changes. Even the temperature changes. And somewhere in your yard, hidden in branches you barely notice during daylight, birds are responding to all of it with behaviors so subtle, so deeply instinctive, that most humans never realize they are witnessing one of the oldest survival rituals on Earth. But once you understand what truly happens between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., your backyard will never feel ordinary again. Because this is not simply about birds sleeping in trees. It is about fear, memory, trust, and the invisible war that unfolds every single night just outside your window. Today, we're going to step into that hidden world. Not the daytime world humans are familiar with, the bright world of birdsong and movement and fluttering wings, but the other world, the one that exists in darkness, the one birds desperately hope you never disturb. At first glance, nighttime seems peaceful for birds. By dusk, most species disappear into silence. The frantic motion of the day fades away. Feeding stops. Calls become rare. The sky empties. And eventually, the yard becomes still enough that humans assume the story has ended. But biologically, this is not rest in the way humans understand rest. Birds do not sleep with the confidence we do. They cannot. A sleeping bird is one of the most vulnerable creatures in nature. Its body temperature drops slightly. Its awareness slows. Its reaction time weakens. And unlike mammals that can retreat into dens or underground shelters, many birds spend the night exposed, balanced on branches no wider than a finger. Which means the darkness is not safety, it is risk management. And this is where things become remarkable. Researchers studying avian sleep have found that many birds never fully surrender to sleep at all. Some species engage in what scientists call unihemispheric slow-wave sleep, where one half of the brain rests, while the other remains alert enough to detect movement or danger. Half asleep, half awake. Even in rest, they are preparing to flee. Imagine what that means psychologically. A creature so shaped by survival that true unconsciousness became impossible. And between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., that vigilance intensifies, because this period of night creates a terrifying imbalance in nature. Owls become more active. Ground predators move closer to open spaces. Temperatures often reach their lowest point before dawn, forcing birds to conserve energy while remaining ready to escape instantly. It is exhaustion mixed with fear. And in your yard, hidden among leaves and shadows, tiny bodies are making impossible calculations every second. Stay still. Stay warm. Stay alive. What most people never realize is that birds choose sleeping locations with astonishing intelligence. Not randomly, not casually. Every branch is evaluated. Every angle matters. A bird may choose a perch based on moonlight exposure, branch flexibility, escape trajectory, predator visibility, even wind direction. Smaller songbirds often select thin outer branches because heavier predators cannot easily balance on them. Other species sleep near thorn-covered vegetation or dense clusters of leaves that distort movement and sound. Your yard, to a bird, is not scenery. It is architecture, a map of survival possibilities. And once a bird identifies a location that consistently protects it through the dangerous hours before dawn, something emotional begins to happen. It returns, again and again. Scientists studying roosting behavior have documented remarkable site loyalty in many bird species. Some birds return to the same sleeping location for weeks, others for entire seasons. Certain social species gather in communal roosts containing hundreds or even thousands of individuals, all relying on collective awareness to survive the night. But underneath the science is something deeper. Familiarity becomes safety. Not comfort, not affection. Safety. A branch that held through one dangerous night becomes meaningful. A yard without sudden disturbances becomes memorable. A place where predators failed becomes psychologically important. And slowly, invisibly, your yard may transform from unknown territory into part of a bird's survival memory. This is why sudden nighttime changes can terrify them. A floodlight turning on unexpectedly, a dog released into the yard at 3 a.m., a motion sensor flashing through the trees. To humans, these are small interruptions. To a sleeping bird, they can feel like the beginning of death. Because birds do not experience nighttime uncertainty the way humans do. Their nervous systems evolved under constant predation pressure. Sudden light or sound during pre-dawn hours can trigger explosive stress responses. Heart rates spike. Entire roosts may scatter blindly into darkness. And sometimes, they do not return. This is the part people rarely think about. A bird abandoning a sleeping site is not a casual decision. It means the environment no longer feels predictable enough to survive in. And predictability, in the wild, is everything. Especially between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. Because those hours hold another secret most humans never notice. The world itself becomes unstable. Just before dawn, atmospheric conditions begin shifting. Air currents change direction. Humidity rises. Temperatures dip toward their lowest point. Scents travel differently. Sound behaves differently. For predators, this creates opportunity. For birds, it creates uncertainty. And uncertainty is exhausting. Studies on urban birds have shown that artificial nighttime noise and light pollution can severely disrupt avian sleep cycles, reducing immune function, increasing stress hormones, and even affecting migration patterns. In other words, the modern human world has quietly invaded one of the few vulnerable spaces birds still possessed, the night. The consequences are profound, because sleep is not simply rest, it is repair, memory consolidation, survival preparation. A bird deprived of proper nighttime recovery may forage less effectively, react slower to predators, and struggle during migration. So when humans unknowingly fracture the fragile stillness of those pre-dawn hours, we are not merely interrupting sleep, we are interfering with survival itself. But perhaps the strangest part of all is this. Even during the most dangerous hours of night, birds are listening. Not singing, listening. Researchers using nighttime acoustic monitoring discovered that many birds remain highly responsive to subtle environmental cues while roosting. Tiny sounds matter. The rustle of leaves, wing beats overhead, the silence of insects suddenly stopping. Birds understand silence differently than humans do. To us, silence feels peaceful. To them, sudden silence can signal that something nearby has caused the world to freeze. A predator, an owl gliding without sound, a cat moving beneath bushes. And somewhere in your yard at 2:47 a.m., a sleeping bird may awaken instantly because the crickets stopped singing for 2 seconds. That is how sensitive this hidden world truly is. But this is where the story becomes more emotional. Because despite all this danger, birds still return to the same places, night after night, season after season. Why? Because survival is not only about fear, it is also about trust. Not trust in the human sense, not affection or loyalty as we romantically imagine it, but ecological trust, a learned belief that certain spaces reduce danger. And when a bird repeatedly survives the night in your yard, your environment becomes woven into its understanding of safety. Think about how extraordinary that is. A wild creature, descended from millions of years of evolutionary caution, deciding that your small patch of Earth is predictable enough to risk unconsciousness inside it. Quietly, gradually, permanently. And this explains something many people have experienced without understanding. The feeling that certain birds seem unusually calm around their home. The same robin appearing each morning. The sparrows that no longer scatter immediately. The dove that sleeps in the same tree all summer. These behaviors are not random. They are the visible surface of invisible nighttime decisions. Because what happens during the day is often determined by what happened before dawn. A yard that allows rest becomes a yard worth returning to. But there is another layer to this hidden world, one that feels almost philosophical. Between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., birds exist in a state humans rarely experience anymore: complete environmental dependence. They cannot shut out the world. They cannot lock doors. They cannot create artificial safety. They survive only by reading reality correctly. Every sound matters. Every branch matters. Every pattern matters. And in many ways, birds reveal something uncomfortable about modern human life. We have become insulated from the natural consequences of our environment. Artificial light erases darkness. Walls erase exposure. Technology numbs awareness. But birds still live inside the original contract of nature. Attention equals survival. And perhaps that is why watching them feels so strangely emotional. Because somewhere deep inside us, we recognize that vulnerability. We recognize the ancient instinct to search for safe places before nightfall, to seek familiarity, warmth, protection, community, home. Communal roosting behavior reveals this beautifully. Some species gather together in enormous nighttime groups, not simply for warmth, but for collective survival. Hundreds of eyes and ears create a shared awareness impossible alone. One bird senses danger, the entire flock responds. And suddenly, what looked like random clustering becomes something profoundly meaningful: survival through connection. Even in the wild, safety is often communal, not isolated, not independent, together. And perhaps this is why pre-dawn bird behavior feels haunting once you understand it. Because hidden inside these tiny creatures are reflections of ourselves: fear of uncertainty, need for belonging, attachment to familiar places, the desperate hope that we will survive until morning. What most people miss is that dawn itself is not relief. It is transition. The moment the first light appears, birds begin recalibrating instantly. Cortisol levels shift, vocal activity increases, feeding urgency begins, territorial calls return. And if they survived the night successfully, the yard awakens again with birdsong. Humans hear beauty, but beneath that beauty is something else: survival relief. A living creature announcing, "I made it through the darkness." That morning chorus you hear outside your window is not merely music. It is testimony, proof that another fragile night ended safely. And somehow, knowing this changes the sound completely, especially when you realize how many invisible decisions led to that sunrise. Which branch to trust, which shadow to avoid, which sound meant danger, which yard felt safe enough to stay. And perhaps tonight, long after you fall asleep, those same invisible choices will happen again outside your window. A small bird shifting slightly on a branch at 3:12 a.m. An owl passing silently overhead. Leaves trembling in darkness. A sleeping flock listening to the night with half-awake minds. All hidden from the human world. All profoundly real. And maybe that is the strangest truth of all. The most important parts of nature are often the moments we never see. Not the dramatic ones, not the loud ones, but the quiet negotiations of survival happening in darkness while the world believes nothing is there. So tonight, before you close your curtains, look into your yard one more time. Not as property, not as landscaping, but as part of an ancient nighttime world filled with memory, fear, trust, and survival. Because somewhere in those trees, something small may already be preparing for the hardest hours of its day. And if you've ever noticed birds returning to the same branches, the same corners of your yard, the same quiet places morning after morning, then you may have witnessed this hidden ritual without ever realizing it. If you have, share it below. Not just what you saw, but how it changed the way you see them now. And tonight, while the world sleeps, listen carefully, because your yard may not be silent at all.